Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar in honor of Repetitive Strain Injury Awareness Day. I'm Amanda Soliker, the Communications and Engagement Manager here at Construction Safety Nova Scotia. In case you don't know about us, we're a nonprofit association that is funded by the construction industry, and we're dedicated to improving safety outcomes in the industry all across the province. Any employer in the construction sector with a WCB account is automatically a member of our association. There's many benefits to being a member. Some of them are there on the screen. It includes discounted training, consulting services from our highly skilled OHS advisors, your first year of core evaluation and training for free, downloadable and customizable safety templates, and much more. There's lots of different ways that you can connect with us. You can give us a call, you can email us. We're on 4 different social media platforms. You can visit our website at constructionsafetyns.ca. And also, if you're in Burnside, you can pop into our office at 35 McDonald Avenue. And I have to give a plug for our OHS app. This is a great app that you can download. Just search for CSNS, OHS legislation. It really breaks things down nice and easy, all laid out there for you with lots of different resources, and you can search by topic, which makes the safety legislation much more digestible. So today we're doing our webinar with our partners at WCB Nova Scotia. So the Workers' Compensation Board of Nova Scotia provides workplace injury insurance to 20,000 employers in the province and insures over 300,000 workers. They inform Nova Scotians in the prevention of workplace injury, and if an injury occurs, they provide security from its impact to workers and their families in support of healthy and safe return to work. And there's lots of different ways to connect with WCB as well. You see there their phone number, their email. They're on a bunch of different social media platforms as well, and their website with a lot of great resources, worksafeforlife.ca. The last thing that I want to do a little plug for is also our RSI Day resources, since that's what this webinar is about. We did just launch yesterday some brand new resources. So we have a safe lifting poster that you can print out and put up in your work site. We just developed a brand new toolbox talk specifically around RSIs, also known as musculoskeletal injuries. There's some videos there that you can show as a part of the toolbox talk, and there's also a few different safe work procedures as well. So for our webinar today, we have 2 very distinguished speakers. We have Colin Creaser, who's an OHS advisor with us, Construction Safety Nova Scotia, and we have Sean Budden, an ergonomist at WCB Nova Scotia. We're very happy to have them both here to walk us through RSIs and give you more information about this topic. And just as a housekeeping item, if you have any questions during the webinar, you're certainly encouraged to ask them. You can simply write them in the comments on whatever social platform you're watching this on, and the questions pop up here in the back end for me, and I'll see them. And at the end, we'll pose those questions to Colin and Sean. So please put in your questions in the comments. And without further ado, I will kick it over to Colin to kick things off for us.
Great, thank you, Amanda. So again, my name is Colin Creaser. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So a quick little overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to look at what are repetitive strain injuries and why we want to focus on them. We're going to look at some common body parts that are injured. We'll take a look at some contributing factors and some of the key factors behind repetitive strain injuries. We'll take a look at 6 steps towards reduction of RSIs in your workplace. We'll go over a few practical controls, some recommended training or some things to keep in mind when we are looking at training for our workforces, and some resources available for you as well. We can move on there, Amanda.
Hi. So like Amanda said, my name's Sean. I work with the Workers' Compensation Board here in Nova Scotia. So what are repetitive strain injuries, or RSIs? RSIs is a term used for pain or injury caused by repeated movement to a part of the body. You may have also heard the term musculoskeletal injury or musculoskeletal disorder. or sprain strain type of injuries. RSIs are really part of a family of injuries that include all of those MSIs, MSDs. So really, if you hear us use any of those different terms, we're really talking about the same type of injury. And these injuries could be to muscles, tendons, ligaments, blood vessels, or nerves, really anything that can help move the body or is a part of a body movement. Symptoms can include pain, stiffness, or weakness. Decreased range of motion is also another big one. Numbness, muscle cramps, or swelling. I always think of these injuries like when the demands of our work are greater than the body's capabilities, we start to see some fatigue and breakdown of the body. And this might show up over the course of a day. It may happen over weeks, months, or even years. But really when the demands of our work, so maybe the weight of something that we're lifting, pushing, pulling, or carrying, or an awkward posture is causing that demand to be more than our body's capability. We really start to see that fatigue. And when our bodies can't recover enough to compensate for that fatigue, that's when we start to see these injuries pop up. It's really important to understand the symptoms, so the pain, the stiffness, and even more important perhaps for our workers to understand the symptoms and be able to recognize the symptoms, because early identification is really a huge part of these types of injuries, and really important for return to work initiatives. We can move on to the next slide. So why focus on RSIs? Colin will chat about the contributing factors a little bit more later on, so I'll leave those. But this slide really outlines some of the costs associated with the repetitive strain or MSIs. All this data comes from the Workers' Compensation Board, and it's for the construction industry here in Nova Scotia. So on the left-hand side there, we can see the two numbers. So the top one is for the average claim cost, and that is just under $3,400. And so these numbers include what I would call direct costs. So that's medical, so it would be like prescriptions, any treatment that an injured worker would need. So that's just under $3,400 for the average claim cost. When a worker needs to be away from work, so when they have an RSI and they're unable to work due to that injury, that's a time loss claim, and the average cost of those claims when a worker is away from work goes up to $7,600. So we can see the impact that being away from work has on the cost of a claim. That change is really due to the earnings replacement benefit that we need to pay the workers because they're unable to calculate their wage during work. And the 10.4 is weeks on average were lost from work, which is fairly significant. That's almost 3 months away from work, especially when we consider that the longer someone is away from work, the less chance they actually have to go back to work. So really, really important to focus on any return to work initiatives that we have, and keeping the workers at work, not only for the benefits that we know that provides to the worker, keeping them engaged in their work and their work life, but we can also see that there are some costs associated with people being away from work as well. On the right-hand side, the most common causes of these types of injuries might be better to think of that as like the most common injury types. So overexertion, I talked a little bit before about the demands of the work exceeding our body's capabilities. So that would be your overexertion type of injuries. So that's 30% of these injury types. Bodily reactions is 26%. So that would be your like carpal tunnel syndrome, any damage to the nerves, some spinal injuries as well would kind of fall under that bodily reaction injury type. And then falls comes in number 3 at 24%. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the higher injury types that we see for these RSIs. Move on to the next slide.
So we'll give a minute here if anybody in the audience would like to make a comment in the chat about what body part they feel has the highest frequency of injury. But taking a look at some of these common body parts that are being injured, we're looking at our shoulders, our neck and back, elbows, hands and fingers, forearms and wrists, our legs and feet, including our ankles and our knees as well. We'll just give a second before we change the slide there. As I said, if anybody would like to make a comment on what body part they feel is the most heavily affected, or we'll say that the highest frequency injury rate there. And Amanda, you can change the slide there in just a second if you don't mind.
So again, these numbers come from WCB, the injury rates, and they're for the construction industry. And so as we can see, the back is the most likely body part to be injured at 30%, with the legs, the shoulders, and ankles falling in spots 2 through 4. I think the main thing here is just to give us an idea of where the injuries are happening. A lot of the time we need to prioritize our efforts and our resources. We can't go out and tackle all the hazards in our workplace all at once. So we want to get the best bang for our buck and really go out and try to implement controls or corrective actions for the areas that our workers are most at risk. And that's where I see information like this really coming in handy. Obviously, you'd want to understand your own individual numbers for where the injuries are happening from, but if they happen to be kind of the averages here, and you see backs, legs, and shoulders, you want to go out and try and take a look at tasks that are maybe at a higher risk for a back injury. Maybe that's a lifting and twisting task that you have, or a task that has some awkward postures while carrying or something like that. But it gives you a chance to really prioritize your efforts and go out and look at the tasks that might have a greater chance of an injury for a back injury. So prioritizing your efforts and giving you a place to start and working out from there. You can change the slide.
Great. So we mentioned some key factors earlier. So our forceful exertions, essentially how much force we are applying to the task we're doing or the tool we're using, the piece of equipment that we're using. Our awkward or sustained postures as well. The photo in the presentation there is actually a pretty good example. And then the duration of our tasks as well, essentially how long we're performing these motions or these repetitive kind of acts to perform our task and kind of complete the jobs that we're working on. So a few contributing factors that we are going to look a little bit closer at today are going to be tool use, repetitive motion, and awkward positions. If you can just change that there, Amanda. And back to you.
So we've no worries. So we've gone over what are RSIs, why we need to care about them, and Colin just covered a little bit about how these actually occur, so the risk factors associated with them. This 6-step guide or prevention guide really goes over some of the things that you can do internally in your own organization to prevent these injuries from happening in the first place. It's on, I won't go too in-depth into this guide right now because it would take longer than we have, but it's available on our website. It's a framework for MSI or RSI prevention. You can get it off our website. It does have a few tools as well. There's a risk mapping, which is kind of like a data collection and analysis tool. It has a discomfort survey, which is more along your lines of an ergonomic assessment tool. And there's also a workplace inspection checklist, which is, again, more of a ergonomic assessment tool. So it has a few tools that you can use in your organization to identify where some of the hazards are for these types of injuries. Another thing I like about this guide is it really lines up with a standard health and safety system. And so if you have a strong health and safety management system, you can kind of just weave this into it and make sure that your system is really accounting for hazard, whether they're ergonomic hazards or hazards for RSIs. It really accounts for them. A lot of the time we're really good at identifying chemical hazards and physical hazards or electrical hazards, and we miss those hazards that are associated with the individual and the tasks that they're doing. And so this step, the 6-step guide and some of the tools that go along with it really help us identify those ergonomic hazards and account for them and understand where the risk is coming from. And also goes through just some different control implementations that you can put in. So once you've identified where the hazards are or where the risks are, some of the controls and how do you control an ergonomic hazard, which can be a little bit different than a hazard like a chemical hazard or a hazard for slip, trips, and falls and things like that. So gives some information there, and then what should be included in training, and then how you could evaluate a program like this. But it's on the website. It's great. If you do have any questions or you want support in implementing a strategy like this, definitely feel free to reach out to myself or anyone else at WCB. My contact information will be on the last slide here, and we can discuss how we might be able to help support you in implementing a strategy like this. So we move on to the next slide.
Okay, so of course, when we're looking at our controls, as Sean mentioned, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. If your workplace is seeing a significant amount of back injuries, then we have to take a look at some of the tasks that might be involving or twisting and motions with our backs and that. So when we are looking at controls, we do need to kind of reference and keep the hierarchy of controls in mind. So of course, our elimination. If we can eliminate the hazard altogether, that's going to be our best option. Substitution. If we can substitute a tool, a task, a process, something that's going to be a bit safer to accomplish the task we're trying to do. Of course, we have engineering as well. If we can build or design the hazard right out of the task. We have our administrative controls. Some we could say that's the paperwork side of it, but our scheduling, job rotation, task rotation, safe work practices, safe job procedures, all of those can fall into our administrative controls. And of course, PPE being our last line of defense. So as I said, eliminating the hazard altogether would be the best solution, but that might not always be available to you at the work site or to what particular task you are performing. So finding a solution that works for your workplace is key. So a couple of controls we're going to look at here today. Again, this is not an extensive list. It's just to kind of get our mindsets on some of the things we can be applying during the task that we're performing to help on the prevention side and that. So when we are using our tools, we want to make sure that we're choosing tools that can be used with the wrist straight. We want to provide options for our workers that they can safely use any tool depending on the dominant hand that they use. We also want to inspect our tools regularly, ensuring that worn or damaged tools are fixed and replaced. Looking at tool vibration, so we want to choose tools, if available, that have a vibration reducing features. As well, if we're able to provide rubber or sponge type grips on our tool handles, this will help mitigate some of that vibration, some of that force that's going into our hands, our wrists, our forearms, and continuing up our arms there. We also want to replace blades, drill bits, other parts frequently to maintain efficiency. This makes me think of like a stripped screw or a drill bit, anything that might not be in the best of shape. And just imagine that force you have to put in with the hand and the wrist, elbow, shoulder, as I was mentioning earlier, just to kind of get that screw in place or to be able to properly use that tool. So very important to maintain our tools' efficiency to make what they're designed to do easier for us, right? We also want to ensure that the handle of a tool does not create pressure points in the palm of the hand. This often makes me think a little bit as well about our scaffolding course. We do use clamps. There'll be a wedge, just a couple light hits with the hammer, 2 to 3. We'll get that wedge locked in. Sometimes we'll see people using the palm of their hands almost as a hammer. And you can just imagine the effect that that'll have with prolonged use. So a lot of these controls that we talk about, we're kind of looking at identifying maybe bad habits or identifying things we might not fully be aware of the long run effect of them, and essentially trying to develop ways to mitigate that or improve those situations. If you can change the slide there, Amanda, please. As well, we want to take a look at repetitive motion. So rotate the job tasks and or the employees performing them, kind of hinting at that with our administrative controls earlier. We want to allow for adequate pre and during work stretch breaks, especially in some colder months. We want to adjust the work area or process to reduce repetitive tasks. If we're able to get our material, get our equipment, get our tools closer to us, step or kind of mitigate some of the travel routes or going up multiple flights of stairs maybe to grab equipment that we need. And then some awkward postures. So storing materials between the knee and shoulder height to help reduce some of that overexertion above our heads or reaching and bending down low. Building permanent or temporary work surfaces to bring work up off the ground. That can even be something as simple as a couple pallets in our storage area, just to bring that equipment and that material closer to us. So we're not bending down as much to grab what we need. Any type of mechanical devices that we can use, like carts, hand trucks, lifting equipment, to avoid those awkward lifts and long carries. As well, when applicable, we'd like to use adjustable tools to avoid that awkward wrist or hand positions if possible. So when we are looking at these controls, we want to take some proactive and some reactive measures. Proactively, we can talk with our workforce. Sean mentioned earlier about the discomfort survey. If there's anything that we can do to kind of get ahead of a little bit of what our issues might be. And then that reactive side, we can study some of our injury reports, study some of these discomfort surveys, and see what's going to be the best application moving forward. We can go to the next slide, please. So we want to take a little bit to talk about training and just some things to keep in mind when we are looking at training our workforce on some of the controls we might develop or anything regarding RSI and ergonomic issues in our workforce. So our whole workforce, all of our employees, we want to have some focus on the education on the hazards and the risks that are identified with repetitive strain injuries. We'd like to see some training focus on the proper use of equipment, safe work procedures, along with applicable and required PPE. Moving into our supervisors, our JOSH committee, safety reps, project managers, anyone who is going to be closely related to safety development. We want to see some training that's going to focus on that program development. Now that can be your whole safety program, or it can be individual RSI or ergonomic factors regarding your safety program. As well, some hazard identification, and education and some awareness on proper techniques for inspections, control applications, and maintenance schedules, preventive measures, and some applicable required PPE as well. So after control measures are identified, employees will need to be trained on how to use them before they're implemented. So again, not an extensive list, but just some things that we should focus on when we are educating and training our workforces on recognizing some of the RSI issues that we might have and ways to control them as well and help develop our resources. We can go to the next slide, please. So I think it goes without saying that prevention does pay off. We mentioned a little bit earlier about trying to get ahead of some of these issues that we might be finding ourselves in. So that education piece is really important. That awareness piece is really important. So taking a proactive approach to addressing RSIs can provide significant benefits to your workplace and the bottom line. So effective prevention will allow for fewer lost time injuries, increased efficiency, enhanced productivity, and of course, quality management. Sean, is there anything else you'd like to contribute to the prevention side, or the prevention pays off? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's important just to keep in mind. I mean, going back to that original slide, we talked about the costs of the RSIs. So I mean, there is that cost associated with injuries, and that was more of like the direct costs. There's also like indirect costs, which are hard to really put a figure on them. These would be things like overtime, retraining, rehiring, so employee kind of loss if people are leaving due to injuries. And so those types of like production loss would also fall under that. So really trying to understand the total risk and the total costs that come from these types of injuries, so that you can understand why it's so important to prevent them in the first place, and not only preventing them, but what benefits you're going to get out from preventing them. Another thing, and just kind of looking down the list here, looking at like the productivity and the quality management, a lot of time where we see like clusters of RSIs and these sprain strain type of injuries, we also see dips in production or quality management. Maybe that's in higher amounts of defects or just a lower quality of final product. And so you can really start to pair quality and productivity with RSI injuries and the sprain strain type of injuries. So the benefit of them is much more than just some of the direct cost of the injuries. You start to see increased productivity from your workers. A happier, healthier, more comfortable worker is a much more productive worker. We know that. So really trying to understand all the different benefits you're getting from focusing on the prevention side of these. It's probably the prevention pays off.
Yeah, so then some resources available that are out there. So of course, WCB's website, so www.wcb.ns.ca. There we can find MSI prevention guides, the 6 steps that Sean was discussing earlier, risk mapping, discomfort surveys, workplace inspection checklists, an office ergonomic resource guide, and as well, this website I found quite beneficial. So it is the Center of Research Expertise for the Prevention of Musculoskeletal Disorders, www.msdprevention.com. What I like about it is that it gives you some criteria to select through, the task that you might be performing, the industry that you might be in, parts of the body that might be affected. And once you kind of fill in all that criteria, it will bring up different documents, safe work procedures, different control methods that can be applied as well. So that's a great resource there. Of course, with construction safety, please feel free. You can always reach out to us or jump on our website as well. We do have some new resources available up there today. And again, as Sean said, always reach out to him if you need, and WCB, reach out to us if you need at any time as well. Sean, any other resources you'd like to get a little bit more detail about there? I kind of just skimmed over those quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just encourage people to go to the different websites there and play around with some of the different tools that are available to get more familiar with them. I know a lot of the organizations I work with really like the discomfort surveys, like Colin alluded to earlier, a great connection tool between the workforce and like your management and supervisor level. One thing with these RSIs or MSIs or sprain strain type of injuries, it's they're kind of invisible, especially in the early stages. So it's harder for us to be able to see them, and because we can't really see them, we need to collect information from our workforce. And sometimes that's a hard conversation to have, talking about someone's discomfort or pain. It's not super natural for us to have that type of conversation. And so the discomfort surveys really give a easy kind of a checklist survey to go through, and it's an easy way to collect information from our workforce. I have found that people seem to give really high quality information when going through the survey, and so we can collect that information and better understand where some of that discomfort and pain is coming from that might otherwise be a little bit invisible to us. So again, great tools at our website, as well as the MSD prevention website. So go around, see if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you have enjoyed the presentation. And Amanda, I'll hand it back off to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Colin and Sean. That was great. I definitely want to open the floor now to see if anyone has any questions about this topic in general. We do have one that had come in already about back injury. So we saw that back injury was a top claim. They're wondering if that's always the case, or is that seasonal, or any other, information around the prevalence of back injury that we're seeing?
Yeah, great question. A lot of the time we do see back injuries as the top type of injury, and that's not only for construction industry. That's pretty common across the board. I believe even for like our WCB stats that include all different types of injury across Nova Scotia, that back injury is up there. And again, like I said before, I think it just shows the importance of us focusing on tasks that may result in a back injury, prioritizing our resources and our efforts, and focusing in on those kind of twisting and lifting tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Okay, any other questions? Okay, there's just one more here that came in about getting some help, wondering if someone is able to go to their site to help them out with this. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely. So with construction safety, any of our members and even general public, anytime that anybody wants to call in or even pop in person, if someone's available, we'll definitely try to assist as best we can. We do offer different things that we can come to your work site for, training particularly, any information sessions, toolbox talks, Josh committees. We're always happy to jump in when and where we are able to. Sean, I think you can allude on some options that WCB has for companies as well to go on site and assist them.
Yeah, so we have a couple different options. Myself, I focus on your sprain and strain type of injuries, your RSIs, your MSIs. So I'm definitely a resource available to employers in Nova Scotia. You can reach out to me through phone or email, and we can discuss different options. We also have workplace consultants who offer support in kind of your general health and safety area. And we have other supports for WCB specific things. So definitely feel free to reach out either through our general lines or to myself, and I could get you in touch with someone that might be able to help support you.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of resources available. And, as Colin said, we are here to help. We have a whole team of OHS advisors who can definitely pop out and help you out with any issues that you're having. So definitely be in touch. And it looks like that's it for the questions. So thank you to everybody who joined us today. Both Sean and Colin have provided their contact information there if you want to reach out to them directly with any questions you may have. Of course, you can also reach out to Construction Safety Nova Scotia anytime. Some info there for us as well. And also visit the WCB website for additional information there. So that's a wrap on today's RSI webinar. Thank you very much to Colin and Sean and to everyone for attending. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thanks, guys.